The snow bit through the soles of her feet like broken glass, but Isabel Roca didn't stop. If she stopped, she'd freeze, and if she froze, they'd win. She stumbled forward, hands raw from where the rope had rubbed them bloody breath, burning her throat. Wind screamed over the flat ridge behind her, carrying the echoes of laughter, curses, a voice that had called her a half-breed witch as they stripped the boots from her feet and pushed her into the storm. Los Pedros vanished behind her, just pinpricks of lamplight now. The same lights that watched her kneel on the saloon floor, that did nothing as Esther Varnell wept crocodile tears into a lace kerchief and accused her of murder. I saw her spoon the medicine. I saw the way he looked at her, like she was a curse. No trial, no judge. Just rope, spit, and the bitter cold. Her legs buckled. She caught herself on hands already numb, sinking into snow. Somewhere behind her, a coyote howled long and low, not close. Not yet. She stood. She had to. Her fingers trembled as she pulled the shawl tighter around her shoulders. A thin thing, more dust than cloth. It wouldn't hold long. The moon hung fat and cruel above the desert. Snowflakes drifted like ash. The land stretched empty, no fences, no trees, just rocks and sagebrush buried in white. Her breath rasped like sandpaper. Don T. Stop. Don't give them the satisfaction. She didn't know how long she walked. Maybe an hour, maybe more. Time froze like everything else. Only the pain kept her tethered feet gone. Slick with blood and ice, throat too dry to swallow, thoughts thinning to bone. Then hoofbeats she spun. Nothing behind her but snow and darkness. No, there a rider. One man, no torch. Moving slow, deliberate, not chasing, watching. Her heart punched her ribs. Run, but where? There was nowhere. Left, she staggered off the path, fell behind a scrub bush, too small to hide her. Her breath came fast to fast. The figure rode closer. A dark coat, broad shoulders, slung rifle across the saddle. She clenched a fistful of snow and pressed it to her mouth to keep from making a sound. The horse stopped 10 feet away. The man didn't dismount. You're gonna die out here. His voice wasn't cruel. It wasn't T-kind either, just flat certain. She didn't T-answer, knew from Los Pedros. Still nothing, he sighed. Hell. He slid off the saddle. Boots crunched on ice. He moved like someone used to blood. Slow, quiet, careful. She bolted. Didn't make it 3 steps before her legs collapsed. Her head smacked hard into frozen earth. Lights popped in her vision, and hands not rough, not gentle. He rolled her onto her back. His face swam above her. Scar on his jaw, weeks of stubble. Eyes that looked like they used to be something before they gave up trying. You got a name? She wanted to lie. No strength, Isabel McCrae. He said, Dr. Don T. Get excited. He hooked an arm under her shoulders, half-dragged, half-lifted her toward the horse. Every jolt burned. Her feet screamed. Why? She whispered. He looked at her eyes, tired. Because I'm already going to hell. Might as well earn the ride. He got her onto the horse, climbed up behind, pulled a heavy coat around them both. She tried to sit straight, couldn't he? Don't sleep, he muttered into her ear. You sleep, you die. She let her head fall against his chest. I don't he care? Liar. The horse moved. Each hoof-fall a drumbeat in her skull. Behind them, wind erased her tracks, a head unknown. Inside the coat, her fingers brushed something stiff. Attach. Medical cords. Faded, but still stitched. You're really a doctor? Was? What happened? My wife died. She said nothing. What about you? He asked. What about me? You killed that man they said you killed. Her voice was thin. No. He didn't ask again. The desert stretched around them. The storm thickened. Every breath came harder. Cold seeped through every seam. It crested a ridge. Below, a flicker of firelight from a distant cabin. Home, maybe, or just a place to die indoors. Didn't know which scared her more. She clutched tighter to the coat, not for warmth, but for the thing beneath it, a name, a witness. Someone who saw her crawl out of that snow instead of vanish because she knew what came next. Loss. Pedros didn't forgive. They hunted what they couldn't kill the first time. She'd just survived their first try. If death wanted her, it would have to catch her crawling. The cabin was nothing but a black square against the snow, road, tucked into the slope like it had been built there just to be forgotten. The roof sagged, the wood was weathered to gray. A thin trail of smoke curled from the chimney, like the place hadn't quite given up yet, but it was thinking about it. Elias McCrae pulled his horse up short. The mare tossed her. Head, breath puffing white. Isabel hadn't moved since she slumped against him. He felt her chest rising barely. Her skin was ice. He dismounted first, boots crunching the frozen crust, then reached up to slide her down. She didn't weigh much. That worried him. "Come on," he muttered. "Stay with me." The door creaked open with a groan that echoed in the cold. The warmth inside was faint residual heat from the fire he'd banked before riding out. He kicked it alive again with a stick and a breath and carried her in. Her feet were the worst, blood-slick, frost-bitten, toes pale and waxy. He had to work fast. "Tommy," he called. No answer. He set Isabel down in the rocking chair closest to the hearth and unwrapped the coat from around her. Her hands were mottled, blue around the nails. He grabbed the wool blankets from the trunk and started wrapping her tight. The door behind him creaked again. Small voice. "Who's that?" Elias turned. The boy was barefoot, hair sticking up like haywire, holding a fire poker like a rifle. "She's not dead," Elias said. "Put that down." Tommy's eyes were wide, flicking from the stranger in the chair to the dark stains on the floor. "She from town?" "Yeah, the witch." Elia's jaw clenched. "Get warm water. Not hot, just warm." The boy hesitated, then ran for the kitchen pump. Elias crouched in front of her and peeled the rags off her feet. She hissed through her teeth. That was good. Pain meant she was still in there. "This is gonna hurt," he warned. "I know." Her voice surprised him. Raspy, but there. He looked up. She met his eyes barely, but they were focused. "I know the procedure," she added. He stared at her Peden. She muttered. "Taught me gradual warming. Monitor for compartment syndrome. For infection." Really were his assistant, I really was. Tommy returned with a basin. Elias tested the water lukewarm. "Good." He eased her feet in. She screamed. It was in tea loud. It was worse than loud, raw and caught in her throat like it had to fight its way out. Her body arched, her hands clawed at the chair holder. Elias barked. Tommy dropped to his knees, grabbed Isabel's shoulders. The boy's arm shook, but didn't let go. "The pain means it's working," Elias said. "Blood's flowing again. You're going to keep your feet, both of them. Just breathe." She did. Sharp and shallow at first. Then deeper, her head dropped back. Tears streamed down her cheeks, the first he'd seen. Elias lifted her feet out of the water, angry red, not black. That was something. "You'll keep your toes," he said. "Probably liar." But something like a smile twitched at the corner of her mouth. He wrapped them in dry cloth, checked her pulse. Weak, but steady. Sat back on his heels. Staring? "I thought she was going to die." "She still might." "No," Isabel murmured. "Not yet." They fed her warm broth. She drank it in silence. Her hands still trembled, but her eyes tracked the room like she was. Cataloging everything, gigsits, weapons, weakness. Smart Elias respected that. He moved to stoke the fire. Tommy followed, whispering, "Is she going to stay?" "For now." She really killed the doc. Elias didn't answer. The boy waited. He didn't get one. The room settled into an uneasy quiet. The only sound was the wind clawing at the windows. "Off you go," Isabel said. Her voice was stronger now. "When the storm breaks, you won't make it 10 miles. Dose and tea matter, it does to me." That hung there, awkward and bare. Tommy looked between them, eyebrows climbing. "Brought you enough trouble?" she said. "You think this place was trouble-free?" She looked at him. "The cattle are sick," Elias said. "Can T figure why? The barn roof leaks in 6 places. Tommy's eating me out of what little food I've got, and the bank's 3 months from owning every nail in this shack." She said nothing. "So you want to pay for your stay?" Added, "Fine. You've got work? Doctor a ranch hand?" both. The fire cracked. I know what I saw in that saloon, he added. You didn't flinch, even when they threw glass. Even when they called you, they've called me worse. That's not the point, then what is? Elias looked into. The flames. I buried one woman already. I won't dig another grave. Tommy looked away. The silence felt too big. Why'd they do it? Elias asked. Finally, why now? Isabel wrapped the blanket tighter. Because I was convenient. Because Esther needed a villain. She'll say you poisoned him every day. His heart. She stopped. Her jaw clenched. He knew it was failing. I warned him he wouldn't rest. You're sure that's what killed him? I was there, and no one else. No one but her. Tommy spoke up. Why would she lie? Isabel looked at him, and something in her expression made the boy shrink back. Because insurance pays more for sudden death. Elias sucked in a breath. You're saying I'm saying she wanted him dead? And when it happened on its own, she used it anyway. They let that sit. The fire dimmed to coals. Outside, snow thickened. You're not safe, Elias said. Even out here. I know. They'll send someone. Make sure the job's finished. I know that too. He watched her a long moment. Then you stay, you pull weight. I always have, Tommy yawned. Go to bed, Elias told him. The boy nodded and slipped toward the back room. When the door closed, Isabel whispered, Why? Did you speak for me? Elias didn't answer. I saw you in the saloon. You didn't have to. He poured water into a kettle, set it on the stove. My wife used to ask me that. Ask you what? Why I didn't save her. Isabel's face didn't change, but her voice softened. Childbirth. He nodded once. She trusted me, he said. And I couldn't. The kettle hissed quietly. I'm not her, Isabel said. I know. You're not him. Hope not. They didn't speak for a while after that. Eventually, he brought her tea with honey. He only had 2 jars left. He used one, she noticed. Didn't he say anything? The wind screamed like something dying outside. Elias glanced toward the window. They'll come, he said. Esther, Leland, someone. You're not the only reason. She sipped her tea. The land. He nodded. They've been circling for 2 years. I've got a good spot. Narrows pass through the valley. Perfect for a rail line. And you haven't sold. No, why? He didn't answer. But his eyes flicked to the far wall. A photo sat there in a tarnished frame. A young woman with laughing eyes. A baby in her arms. You're holding ghosts, Isabel said softly. There? Mine to hold. She set the cup down. Slow and careful. What happens if we don't run? She asked. Elias stared at the fire. We make enemies. We already have. They'll try again. Harder, I know. Looked at her. Saw the steel under the torn blanket. The fire under the bruises. You sure you're ready for that? She didn't blink. Cast me out to die, she said. Next time, I won't go quiet. He nodded. Then the wind shifted. Of them stilled. Elias walked to the door. Opened it an inch. Across the snow, maybe half a mile off, 4 lanterns burned in a slow-moving line. Too high to be wagons. Too far for townsfolk on foot. Too steady to be lost travelers. Closed the door. Bolted it. Turned to her. Coming, he said. Her lips barely moved. Let them. But Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. No, these ones won't bring a mob. He loaded his rifle. Checked the rounds. Passed it to Tommy's door. Get some rest, he said to Isabel. You'll need it. Our eyes stayed on the fire. I'm done resting. Outside, hoofbeats pressed into snow. Inside, something old shifted in Elias's chest. He thought it might be fear.
Ow.
Or maybe it was something worse. Hope he didn't like either. He stoked the fire. Somewhere behind him, the sound of leather creaked and metal clicked into place. He didn't turn around, because the next sound he heard was not wood or wind. It was the unmistakable rhythm of a second rifle being cocked, and it wasn't his. The rifle wasn't aimed at anyone, not yet. Isabel sat upright in the rocker, sleeves rolled up, fingers steady, despite the tremor in her legs. The weapon rested across her knees like a long-forgotten friend. I figured, she said, without looking up, if I'm going to stay, I should know where everything is. Elias didn't speak. He watched her hands, saw the way her thumbs flicked over the chamber, checked the rounds without fumbling. You were in the war? She asked. Union Army? Field hospital? Vicksburg, mostly? You keep your rifles clean? He let out a breath through his nose. You know your way around, eh? She nodded once. Dr. Pettin kept one in his office just in case. Did he ever fire it? He didn't have to. Her eyes lifted, then met his. Something passed between them, something wordless and thin as smoke. The silence broke when Tommy came out from the back room, hair mussed, eyes still half closed. He froze when he saw Isabel with the rifle. Relax, kid, she said. Not the kind of witch that eats children. Tommy didn't smile, but he moved to the stove, poured water into a tin cup. I heard them last night, he said. Lanterns for riders, Elias confirmed. Didn't he come closer? Could have been scouts. Or a warning, Isabel said, like the first crack before an avalanche. No one replied. She set the rifle aside and stood. The movement cost her. She winced. Her left foot still robed, but she didn't fall. She made it to the table, pulled a chair, sat like she belonged there. Let's talk about what we're up against, she said. Elias poured coffee into 3 cups, slid one to her, one to the boy. It's got its hooks in every ranch from here to Ojo Caliente, he said. Rupert Leland owns the paper, the loan office, half the sheriff's pay. You're Esther, Isabel asked. Too much pride, too much grief, and a whole lot of charm when she needs it. She's not grieving, Isabel said flatly. Elias gave her a look. I watched her, Isabel continued. 3 days before he died, she came in with her hands shaking, said she wanted to learn about dosage. Said she was tired of being useless. You think she slipped something? No, Isabel said. I think she waited. Let the heart do what it was already going to do. Then twisted it into a rope to hang me with. Tommy said. Down his cup, eyes narrowed. You got proof? Isabel looked at the boy. You ever see a man die from digitalis overdose? No. Then you wouldn't know what to look for. But you would. She nodded once. Elias stood, crossed to a tall cabinet near the stove. He pulled a leather-bound ledger from the top shelf and tossed it on the table, dust puffed up. This was hers, he said. Wife journaled everything. Cattle cycles, storm patterns, even what she dreamed. He flipped to a page near the middle. Here Dr. Vernell made a visit 2 winters ago, she wrote. He looked pale, had a tremor in his right hand. Isabel leaned over the page, read the entry silently, then nodded. Early signs, she said. Congestive heart failure, probably genetic. No one listened. Elias watched her closely. You tried to warn him? I did more than that. Adjusted his doses, cut back his workload, reported it to the board. He told me to stay in my place, Tommy muttered. And now your place is in our kitchen. Isabel didn't flinch, for now. Side wind pushed at the shutters. Elias turned to the window. I need someone to check the southern pasture today. Fence might be down. Yotzel, go after the calves. I'll go, Tommy said. No. You stay and sort the tool shed. I can, you stay, Elias said again, firmer. He looked at Isabel. She raised an eyebrow. You're trusting me to ride out? You walk like hell but sit a horse like a soldier. You're a decent judge of liars. Don't make me regret it. 15 minutes later, she stood by the barn, cinching the saddle strap tight. She'd found her boots drying by the fire, stiff but wearable. The cold stung through the cracked leather, but she said nothing. Elias came up beside her, handed over a canteen and a packet of dried meat. You remember the route? South Ridge, check the fence line. Look for signs of poison near the watering trough. He gave her a look. Not just good with a rifle, she said. She mounted. The horse shifted under her like it wasn't sure what to make of her weight, but she held steady. McCrae, she said, before she kicked the horse into motion. He looked up. Pettin didn't fear what I did, feared what I knew. Then she rode. The pasture looked like a photograph left out in the rain. White drifts over. Red earth, the wind had teeth. She kept her scarf tight over her mouth, scanning the ground for tracks. At the far end of the ridge, she found the broken fence posts snapped. Wire twisted, blood in the snow. She dismounted, crouched low. The blood was dark, dried fast. Coyote prints everywhere, but something else to a horseshoe. Not a wild Mustang shod. Heavy, someone had been here. Near the trough, she found the water partially frozen. A dead bird floated. In the ice, neck crooked. She dug through the nearby dirt, fingers stiff. A root. She yanked it free. White, tubular, faint smell like parsnip water hemlock. Not native to this part, not something cattle would eat unless it was mixed in hay or pulled up fresh. She packed it in her saddlebag, mounted again. The wind pushed. Harder on the ride back, she felt eyes. Not real ones, it's memory ones. Voices rising from the saloon. Half-breed whore. Indian poison. She smiled when he fell. She pushed the horse faster. By the time she got back, Elias was in the barn, sleeves rolled, hammering a new latch. Tommy stood at the fence, watching her. She tossed the saddlebag down. I found this near the trough. Elias took it, turned the root over in his hand. His brow furrowed. You know what that is? Water hemlock, you sure? Smell it. He did. When cursed. It's not just the cattle they're trying to kill, she said. Elias looked up sharply, and then he nodded. She stepped past him, toward the house. Where are you going? He called. To do what Piton should have let me do. She said, write it down. Document everything. Names, symptoms, roots, lies. Tommy trailed after her. You think someone's trying to kill you? She didn't answer. Inside, she set the root on the table like it was evidence at a hanging. Outside, Elias watched the horizon. No lanterns tonight, no riders. But he didn't believe the quiet meant safety. He believed it meant they were planning something worse, and tomorrow they'd have to dig deeper. Because if someone was planting poison in the ground, it meant they weren't afraid of getting their hands dirty. Not anymore. Tommy had been watching her for 3 days straight. Not in the way a boy watches someone he admires, and not in the way a child watches someone he fears. He watched Isabel like a dog watches a strange animal on its porch, quiet, tense, waiting to see if it would bite or bolt. She felt his eyes when she boiled roots at the stove, when she wrapped gauze around her ruined feet, when she scribbled sharp little notes into Ilias's old weather journal. Even now, bent over the workbench, sharpening a skinning knife, she could hear his breath catch when the metal scraped stone. You gonna use that on someone? Isabel didn't turn. If I have to. I didn't flinch at the answer. He stepped closer, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders hunched like a bird preparing for a storm. You ever cut a man? She set the blade down. You ever seen someone bleed out? He didn't answer right away. Then, I saw my daddy get shot. How old were you? 7? What did you do, Ran? She looked at him, really looked at the dirt caked under his fingernails. The bruise fading near his temple, the 2 short sleeves on his coat. Elias had patched the kid's life together with rough string and hope, but Isabel saw the seams. Running's not cowardice, she said. Sometimes it's just surviving. Tommy shifted his weight from one foot to the other. I don't want to run next time. There it was, plain as day. She picked up the knife, held it out, hilt first. He didn't take it. Not for hurting, she said. Not unless you mean it. Tommy nodded, stepped back. Teach me something else. Like what? Want to know? How not to be useless when people are dying. The words caught her mid-breath. That wasn't something a boy should know how to say. Not like that. Not with the kind of weight adults carried in their bones. She thought of the men in Las Pedras. The way they looked through Tommy like he wasn't even there. How easy it would be for a boy like him to vanish, become nothing. Ever held a needle? I've sewn my own boots, not the same. Show me. She hesitated, then reached under the bench, pulled out a canvas satchel. Inside, salves poultices, a roll of clean cotton, and an old wooden-handled suture kit. Your hand steady? She asked. Tommy nodded. She cut a strip of cloth, rolled it tight, held it to her own palm. Start here, just a single stitch. Pretend it as flesh. Tommy took the needle. His fingers trembled just a little. He pierced the fabric, looped it, tied off. Too shallow, she said. He tried again. Better again. Better still. By the fifth stitch, his breathing had slowed. "You have a good grip," she said. "I shoot squirrels, that explains it. It worked like that for an hour." Elias passed by the window once, nodded once, said nothing. "Tommy." "Stitched," Isabel corrected. A silence built between them, but it wasn't heavy. It was the kind that came from people working on something that mattered. When they stopped, his hands were ink-smudged, his shoulders looser. "You remember everything I showed you?" she asked. "Yeah. If I'm bleeding, really bleeding, and you're the only one there, what's the first thing you do?" He sat up straighter. "Stop the blood. How pressure? With cloth, then, find the wound, see if it's deep. And if it is, stitch it. Fast, tight. And if you panic," he looked her dead in the eyes. I won. She almost believed him. That night, the wind came harder, but it wasn't the storm that woke her. It was the dream. Not even a dream, really, just the flash of Esther's face, those tears too rehearsed, that smile she wore at the funeral like a trophy. Isabel sat up on the cot, sweating. The fire had burned low. She swung her legs over the edge, wincing as her feet touched cold. Floorboards, from the kitchen, a sound metal clinked. Not heavy, not urgent. She patted out, quiet. Tommy sat at the table, turning the suture needle between his fingers. A candle flickered near his elbow. "You should be asleep," she said. "I am." She stepped into the light. Tommy didn't look up. "You ever get scared?" he asked. She leaned against the doorframe every day. He nodded. "My mama used to hum when she was scared. Like under her breath, real low. I think it was so we wouldn't know." Isabel said nothing, but I knew. Tommy looked up then, eyes glassy but steady. "Were you there when Dr. Barnell died?" She didn't flinch. "Yes." "Did you touch the medicine?" "No." "Did she?" "Not while I was there." Tommy set the needle down. "I believe you," he said. She stepped forward, pulled the blanket from the back of the chair, wrapped it around his shoulders. "You get some sleep, doctor," he grinned. "You think I could really be one? You've got the hands for it?" She ruffled his hair. He batted her away. Before he left the room, he stopped and asked, "What do we do if they come again?" "Same thing we always do, which is think faster than they hit." He disappeared down the hallway. The next morning, she was up before Elias. She'd started the fire, warmed the water, even put coffee on. Her feet throbbed, but she moved through it. Elias came in, looking half impressed, half wary. "You sleep at all?" he asked. "Enough?" He poured himself a cup, sipped, made a face. "You didn't boil the grounds. I'm not your housemaid. Didn't say you were." She handed him a folded scrap of paper. "This Tommy's handwriting, his notes from last night." Elias unfolded it, read lines about pressure, blood loss, suture technique, infection. "Kid learns fast," he muttered. "He listens. You sure you're not just teaching him so he can patch you up when it goes bad?" She shrugged. "Why not both?" Elias sipped again. "You're different when you're around him," he said.
"Oh.
Dad, you talk more. Smile sometimes, scowl less." She raised an eyebrow. "That's your bar for humanity." He grunted. They stepped outside together. The air was dry, sharp. The snow had begun to melt in patches, leaving behind mud in the faint. "Smell of rot? Any news from town?" she asked. "Nothing official." "No. But I hear Leland's been seen talking to strangers at the livery. Mercs, maybe?" They walked past the barn. The cattle were huddled near the far fence. One calf limped. "We're running out of time," she said. "I know. They're not just trying to take the land. They want to wipe us off it." Elias watched the horizon. "They'll come legal first, then dirty," she nodded. "Then we make a case." "What kind?" "The kind that stinks enough for a city paper to care." Elias turned toward her. "You're thinking of going to Santa Fe?" "No, not yet." "Then what?" "We need records. Medical, financial. Someone who can tell us how Leland's been operating." Elias frowned. "That'll mean going into town. I know. Dangerous. I'm counting on it." They stood in silence. The sun rose higher. The frost burned off from the house. Tommy called out, "Isabel, Elias." They turned fast, hands to weapons. The boy stood in the doorway, eyes wide. "There's someone coming down the road." Elias didn't hesitate. "Inside now." Tommy ran. Isabel didn't move. "Could be nothing," Elias said. "Could be." She squinted. The figure was distant, but on foot, cloaked, limping. Not a rider, not a lawman. But not harmless either. Elias narrowed his eyes. "You know that walk?" Isabel's voice dropped. "Sister Imelda," the words felt like stone in her mouth. And in her gut, something old twisted, part memory, part fear. Because if the sister had come all this way, it wasn't for prayers. It was for secrets. Secrets that had teeth. Esther Varnell lit her second cigarette before breakfast, standing in the back parlor of the boarding house she'd moved into after the funeral. The mirror on the wall caught her profile still sharp, still composed. Black dress, pinned veil, just enough puffiness around the eyes to sell grief to those who needed to believe it. She didn't mourn Dr. Varnell. She missed his reputation more than the man. What she really wanted was the land. And now, thanks to Isabel Rocha, that was getting more complicated. She drew in a long breath, exhaled slowly. She's alive. Rupert Leland sat across from her, legs crossed, tapping ash into an expensive glass tray like he owned it. Which technically he did. He owned most of Los Pedros in paper, or in fear. "You sound surprised," he said. Esther turned from the mirror. "You promised me it was handled. I promised you she wouldn't crawl back into town." Rupert gave her a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "I never said she wouldn't survive the desert. She should have been dead. By morning, and yet..." Esther walked to the sideboard, poured herself a splash of sherry. It was barely past 9. "She's staying with McCrae," Rupert said. Esther didn't react. "Then she's not just alive. She's dangerous." "She always was," Rupert said. "You're the one who underestimated her." "I didn't underestimate anyone. I played the part you wrote." He leaned forward, eyes colder now. "He told the whole town she poisoned your husband. She didn't need to. He was already dying." Rupert's brow ticked upward. Then why frame her? Esther's fingers tightened around the glass. "Because people believe what they want to believe. A brown-skinned woman with strange herbs in her satchel? That's a noose, just waiting for a reason." Rupert stood, adjusted his coat. Now she's breathing, and that reason's about to unravel. She won tea talk. "You?" Don T sound convinced. Esther took a slow sip. "I'm not. 'Cause McCrae's not just keeping her warm, he's giving her a platform. Then we silence both." Esther tilted her head quietly. "If possible." "If not," Rupert smiled. "Dead men don't defend property claims." Across town, Deputy Hayes leaned against the jailhouse railing, chewing a toothpick, watching the two men ride in from the north. One wore a blue duster. The other had a sawed-off shotgun strapped across his back and a scar that split his chin like a cracked walnut. Hayes straightened. They tied their horses outside the saloon, but didn't go in. Instead, they walked straight for Rupert's bank. By the time Hayes crossed the street, they were already behind the office door. Rupert stood with his back to the desk, arms folded. Esther sat in the corner, veiled, silent. The man in the duster spoke first. "Heard you got a pest problem?" Rupert didn't smile. "A trespasser." The one with the shotgun grinned. "We do evictions." Rupert stepped aside, tossed a small leather pouch on the desk. It clinked. "2 targets," he said. "Both on McCrae's property. Names Elias McCrae, Isabel Roker." The man with the scar tilted his head. "Town doctor was gonna look messy if he winds up full of holes. I don't care how it looks. I just make it final." That scarred man looked at his partner. "Night job. Snow's melting. Hoofprints. L-stick." Rupert walked to the window, looked toward the courthouse. "Do it clean. No fire, no splash. Want it to look like they disappeared. Into the storm." The men nodded behind them. Esther finally spoke, and the boy. Rupert turned. "What boy?" She looked him dead in the eyes. "Don T insult me?" The two men exchanged glances. You want him gone too? The scarred one asked.
Esther said nothing.
Rupert did. No, he said. The boy asked nothing. Esther stood. She adjusted her veil, lifted her chin. Nothing becomes something, given enough time. That night, while Rupert polished the barrel of his Remington behind locked doors, and Esther lay awake tracing the edge of a forged deed beneath her mattress. 2 riders moved out of Las Pedras, with no lanterns, no trail. They headed west, toward the ranch tucked into the mouth of the valley. They rode slow, careful, wolves in no hurry. Ow. One of them carried a length of rope already knotted. The other carried a shovel. Back at the ranch, Isabel sat. At the kitchen table under lamplight, leafing through old ledgers she'd found in the cellar. McCrae's handwriting was neat, methodically cheese-and-tracked, each loan noted.
Mommy,
Leaned against the doorway.
think they're...
Gonna come again tonight? She didn't look up. Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Why wait? 'Cause they want us tired. Tommy rubbed his eyes. Go to bed, she said. He hesitated.
I didn't.
I don't want to wake up and find you gone. She looked at him, really looked. You won tea? Promise? No. Swallowed hard. But I'll try like hell. Eh? She ruffled his hair as he passed. He ducked away, but not too far. Elias came in a minute later. Off his coat, sat across from her. Everything quiet? For now, she said. He glanced at the stack of papers. You digging for a miracle? No, just leverage. He nodded slowly. Then, after a long silence, you ever think about what happens if we win? She looked up. You mean if we survive? No, I mean win. Clear your name, keep the land, burn their lies down to nothing. She didn't answer, 'cause she hadn't let herself think that far. Finally, she said, winning's just another beginning. Elias smiled, tired and thin. Then let's start planning for that. They sat like that, with the fire low and the quiet thick. Neither of them saw the shadow pass along the tree line. Nor did they hear the soft creak of leather and the low hiss of a match in the dark. But outside, death was already moving. It wasn't planning to knock. The first sign something was wrong came from the horses. At just past midnight, a sharp snort cut through the still air, and a nervous shuffle. Hooves on frozen ground. Elias opened his eyes in the dark, heart already beating fast. He'd heard that sound before on patrol years ago, when he was the last man standing on a blood-wet hill outside Vicksburg. Animals always knew first. He slid out of bed without lighting a lamp, grabbed the rifle from beside the door, his breath fogged in the cold. Bare feet on creaking wood, its every step a memory of the war. Outside, the wind had died down, too quiet now, the kind of quiet that listens. He stepped onto the porch. The horses shifted again in the paddock, alert, nostrils wide. Then he saw it, glint near the tree line, not moonlight, metal. He raised the rifle fast. 2 shots rang out. One buried into the porch beam beside his head. The other took the lamp hanging from the post, shattering it in a burst of glass and flame. Sparks spilled across the porch. The darkness swallowed everything. Elias dove back inside up now. Tommy tumbled out of bed in the back room. Isabel was already at the door, pistol in hand. She looked like she hadn't slept. South side, Elias barked 2 of them. Maybe more. She grabbed the satchel by the fireplace, slung it over her shoulder. Oh, Tommy clutched. His boots in one hand, eyes wide. We have to get to the back cellar, Isabel said. Elias shook his head. They'll expect that. It's the first place they'd torch, then what? Elias looked at her, then at Tommy. There's a crawl under the smokehouse. It's tight, dark. They won't find you there. You think I'm hiding? Isabel asked, jaw set. I think they're aiming to kill you first. Outside, the horses cried out, one of them in pain. Isabella's breath caught. Take the boy, Elias said. Go now, I'll draw them off. I'm not running, she said. Then you'd better shoot straight. A 3rd shot cracked through the front window, shattering the frame. Elias hit the floor hard, rolled behind the table. With splinters rained across the room, Tommy screamed. Isabel pulled him down, glass in his cheek. shallow but bleeding. She pressed a cloth to it, held him tight. "Do what I say and don't freeze," she whispered, "understand?" He nodded, teeth chattering. She pushed him toward the back door. They slipped out under cover of shadow, crouching low, skirting the edge of the barn. From the ridge, two figures moved, one with the shotgun, the other with a coil of rope swinging easy in his hand, like he was on his way to hang laundry instead of a human being. Isabel recognized the walk-scar chin, the other one slower. Older, but mean. They were sweeping the property with confidence. Like they knew every inch. She ducked low behind the water trough. Tommy hugged the dirt. Inside the house, Elias fired again. Hit something. Someone grunted. Then another voice hissed from the dark, "We just want the woman. Give her up and this ends clean." Isabel moved fast, crossed the yard. One gunshot echoed behind her but missed wide. She reached the tool shed and kicked the door open. Tommy slid in after her. She lit a match, cupped it with her hand. Saw the outline of barrels, shovels, rusted saws. One nail puller. One crowbar. She grabbed both, loaded the pistol. Outside, the crunch of boots drew closer. She turned to Tommy, whispering, "If they come in, go for the knees. Don't aim high, you'll miss." He nodded, gripping the crowbar so tight his knuckles went white. A shadow passed by the window. Isabel dropped the match. Silence again. Then the shed door burst open. The man with the scar stepped in. Isabel fired. He staggered back, howled, clutching his shoulder. Before he could react, Tommy swung the crowbar with everything he had. The man didn't fall, but he reeled. Isabel tackled him. They hit the ground hard, and her knee landed square in his ribs. Tried to grab her wrist. She drove the nail puller straight into the side of his leg. He screamed. She rolled off, grabbed the pistol, aimed. The second man was at the doorway. She fired once. Missed. He retreated. Outside, Elias was shouting something too far to hear clearly. The man in the shed groaned. Isabel stood over him, blood on her hands. He looked up at her with rage, with fear. "We're supposed to be dead," he spat. "She didn't blink, you first." By dawn, the snow was streaked with blood and ash. The man with the scar was tied to the porch post, screaming about his rights. The other had vanished into the hills, wounded but not dead. Elias stood over the man, bruised and breathing hard. "You talk," he said, "or I let her work on you again." The man flinched. "They paid us," he said, "to disappear her, make it look like the storm took her." "Who paid Leland?" Varnal woman gave the final word. Isabel leaned against the porch rail, cradling her wrist sprained. Could have been worse. Hey, she looked over at Elias. "You believe him?" "I do." Tommy sat on the steps, hands shaking, eyes on the snow. Elias crouched beside him. "You did good." Tommy didn't answer, but after a moment he said, "I didn't panic." "No," Elias said. "You didn't?" Isabel walked over, sat beside him. "You're not useless," she said. He looked up. She handed him the pistol. "Keep it, just in case." Elias stared out at the horizon. "They'll come harder next time." "Let them," Isabel said. "We're not done." Elias nodded slowly. "We're going to have to take this to them, strip them bare in daylight." She looked down at the bleeding man tied to her porch, then back toward town. "You want to win a war," she said. "You bring the fight to the courthouse." Steps, and in her eyes now, the fire was not survival. It was retribution. They left the wounded man tied to the post until the sun crested the ridge. By then, his breath came in short, wet rasps. Isabel had checked the leg shallow. Muscle puncture, nothing fatal. But she hadn't offered anything for the pain. "You'll live," she'd said flatly, and left him there, watching the wind carry his guilt into the cold. Elias stood beside her now, staring down the trail that led toward town. "You sure about this?" She nodded. "You said it yourself. We can't wait for them to bring the next fire. We go in first," he didn't argue. Tommy came around the corner wearing Elias's second-best coat, a scarf wrapped twice around his neck, pistol tucked in the back of his belt. He looked older than he had a week ago, like the ground had shifted under his feet, and he'd learned how to keep walking. "Wagon's ready," he said.
"I'm ready."
Isabel turned back to the man tied to the post. "We take him." "Why?" Elias asked. He already confessed. Not to the right people. They hit the road before mid-morning. Las Pedras lay 6 miles east, just past the low ridgeline where the wind shifted directions without warning. The wagon creaked under the weight of 3 people, 1 prisoner, and a satchel of documents Isabel had pulled from the McCrae's cellar, old letters, land records, cattle registry, and 3 carefully folded sheets she hadn't let anyone else touch. They won't let us walk into the courthouse, Elias warned. They'll meet us before we cross Maine. I'm counting on it, she said. He glanced at her, brows drawn. She tapped the side of the wagon. Everything we need's right here. Just have to survive the street. They came into town slow, the wagon wheels crunching over frozen mud. People stopped what they were doing. Store clerk froze mid-sweep. A boy dropped a pail of water. Woman crossed herself and turned away. At the center of Main Street stood 3 men. Deputy Hayes was one. His hand hovered near his revolver, sweat already beading on his temple. Next to him stood Rupert Leland, in a black coat so fine it looked like it belonged in another century. And at the center Esther Varnell, veiled down, spine straight, eyes unreadable. Elias pulled the reins, brought the wagon to a stop 20 feet from them. Isabel stood in the bed of the wagon. The town went quiet. Miss Roca, Leland called out. You've got some nerve. She didn't blink. And you've got a lot to hide. Hayes cleared his throat. You're under warrant, ma'am. Wanted for attempted fraud and obstruction of justice, and trespassing on restricted land. Elias stepped down. That land belongs to me. Esther smiled like she was at a tea party.
At!
Any more you forged that deed? Isabel said. You doctored signatures. I have proof. You have paper, Leland said. That's not the same. Isabel turned, hauled the injured man forward by the rope around his wrists. He stumbled, face pale, legs stiff. This man tried to kill me, she said. On your orders. Leland tilted his head, amused. Is that true, mister? The man said nothing. Isabel leaned close to him. Tell them what you told us, or I hand you to the Rangers. That got his attention. I was paid, he croaked. By him. To kill her and McCrae, make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Hayes looked around, panicked. Leland took a step forward. You expect anyone to believe the word of a wounded felon? I expect them to believe the ledgers, Isabel said. She pulled the satchel forward, dumped its contents onto the wagon bench. Deeds, receipts, letters, and at the top 3 folded pages, handwritten notes, she said, lifting one. By Dr. Petton, rest his soul. Notarized. Dated, he documented Varnell's heart condition, listed dosage instructions, left no ambiguity. Esther's face didn't change, but her hands twitched. This proves I didn't poison him, Isabel said. Out of what? You already knew he had a long silence, and Esther said, quiet but sharp. Those notes were stolen. Isabel turned. Funny. Petton kept them in his locked chest. You didn't even know they existed. Leland stepped forward. You think this show gets you out clean? No, Isabel said. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded telegram. Santa Fe Tribune, she said. I sent them copies 3 days ago, along with a sworn affidavit from McCrae, and a message that if we die, everything goes public. Leland's face cracked, finally. You bitch. Isabel smiled. Say that louder. They didn't fire a shot. Hayes stepped back first, hands raised. People began to move slowly but surely toward Isabel, toward Elias, toward the truth. Rupert Leland didn't run, but he looked like a man already buried. Esther didn't speak again. She just walked away, veil fluttering. By the time the town marshal showed up from the next county, called in by wire and pressure, the story had already changed. They left town before dusk. Didn't he say much? Too many eyes? Too many hands trying to shake theirs? Too many apologies handed over too late. Tommy rode quiet in the wagon, rifle across his lap. Not a child anymore. Elias led the way on horseback, head down, jaw tight. Isabel sat beside the boy, her hands stained with ink and blood and something heavier. When the ridge finally blocked town from view, Elias slowed. Waited. What now? He asked. Isabel looked at him. Then back toward Las Pedras. Now we see what the truth is worth. And in her chest, something opened. Not peace, not yet. But the space where it might grow. The first letter arrived 2 days after they cleared their names. Number. Stamp, no return address. Just a single folded page slipped under the door while they slept. Isabel found it first. The handwriting was careful, slanted, unmistakably practiced. She read it once, then again. Then she burned it in the stove before Elias or Tommy could ask questions. But it stayed with her, the words. The threat behind the politeness. We see you're still alive. Some of us are disappointed, others are curious what you'll do with that second chance. Be careful what you dig up. Not all bones stay buried. She didn't tell Elias. Not yet. Instead, she went back to the shed behind the barn, where she'd stashed the old satchel, where the rest of Petton's papers were tucked in oilskin, untouched since Las Pedras. Opened the bag. Slowly, fingers shaking, but not from cold. At the very bottom, beneath the charts and dosage sheets, lay something she hadn't meant to bring, an old yellowed envelope. She hadn't seen it since the day Peyton handed it to her 5 months before he died. Don't open it unless I don't wake up, he'd said, and only if you think someone helped that along. She hadn't opened it after his death. There'd been no time. Then the storm, the chase, the burial and reputation. Now, with her name cleared and the heat cooling, she unfolded the flap. Inside was a single page. A list of names. 3 she recognized. 2 she didn't. 1 was Rupert Leland, the other 4. She had to read twice to make sure. She stepped back from the bench, heart thudding. Because if what Petton had written was true, the plot against her went deeper than Las Pedras. It started long before. And it wasn't just about land. Elias found her in the barn an hour later. You haven't eaten. She didn't. Look up. Not hungry. You look like hell. That's fair. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. You going to tell me what's happening, or do I have to guess? She handed him the envelope. He read the list. Quiet filled the barn. Elias's jaw flexed. These names, half of them sit on the state board. I know, and the others. 2 are private funders. Petton told me once that someone had been paying him off the books. He didn't say who, but I think they're on here. Why now? Because we're still standing. Because if Petton knew, someone else does too. Elias handed the envelope back. You sure you want to chase this? I'm not chasing. I'm finishing what he started. That night, Isabel sat by the fire, reading back through Petton's journals. The ink had faded in places, but the patterns were their strange prescriptions ordered by a third party. Cases he hadn't filed through the clinic? Patient. Names she didn't recognize. Dosage inconsistencies. They painted a picture. Someone had been using Las Pedras as a test site, and Petton had been complicit. Not willingly, but eventually. It explained the money, the silence, the guilt in his last months. He wasn't just covering up his condition, was covering up something far bigger. Medical trials, illegal, hidden in plain sight. Poor patients, rural routes, no oversight. Now, Isabel realized, she was the last person alive who could connect the dots. That made her more dangerous now than when she was accused. And it made her a target all over again. Tommy watched her from the doorway. You're doing that thing again? What thing? Staring through the page like it's going to confess? She closed the journal, smiled faintly. You get taller today? Maybe. We're stepped into the room crossed. His arms? You're not going to leave again, are you?
Hey.
She looked at him. Why would you think that? Because you're writing like someone who's about to run. She reached out, pulled him closer. I won run, not this. Time. Even if they come for you again? She nodded. Especially then. Tommy leaned his head against her shoulder. And for the first time in a long time, Isabel let her eyes close without fear. 3 nights later, another letter arrived. This one addressed by name. It came with a pressed flower inside. It's not native to the region. something grown carefully. Manicured, clean. The message was typed. You've stirred ghosts better left alone. The man you buried wasn't the only one with secrets. We suggest you stop digging. No signature, no idle threat either. Because at the bottom, paperclipped to the page, was a photograph. Of her, not recent, but not old either, were taken. From a window. Watching her step down from the train platform in Las Pedras, 6 weeks before the doctor's death, they'd been watching long before the snowstorm. She didn't burn this one. She folded it neatly. Placed it inside the journal beside the envelope. Then she packed the satchel again, not to run, to travel. Santa Fe held the medical board's records archives, a testimony, logs, funding trails. If there was proof to be found, it would be there. And this time, she wasn't going alone. Elias came to the porch at dawn, where to? She didn't look back. Somewhere colder than this? Should I bring a coat or a gun? She smiled. Tight, bitter both. And with the sun barely breaking over the ridge, they rode out. Not running, not hiding. Chasing the truth into the teeth of the machine that built the lie. The train to Santa Fe cut through the high desert like a steel blade, slow, deliberate, and loud enough to give a man time to think terrible things. Isabel sat by the window, gloved hands folded tight in her lap. She hadn't spoken in over an hour. Across from her, Elias watched the planes roll by and wondered how far guilt could carry a person before it broke their back. He finally spoke. You sure about what's in those files? I'm sure enough to know someone died trying to hide them. The satchel sat between them on the floor. Every bump of the rails reminded her it was there, like a second. Heartbeat Pettin wasn't perfect, she added. But he wasn't a monster. Whatever he got pulled into, it scared him. He kept records because part of him wanted it to end. Elias didn't argue. Hugh knew that tone. It was the same one soldiers used when they talked about the men they'd buried and couldn't forgive or forget. The train hissed into a whistle stop near Pecos. A family climbed off. No one climbed on. Crossed the aisle, a man in. A gray coat turned the page of a newspaper too slowly, eyes flicking toward them every few minutes. Elias saw it, filed it. They were being watched. Santa Fe greeted them with wind and red dust, and a courthouse that looked more like a church than a place where men lied under oath. The clerk at the state medical board looked annoyed just by their presence. You'll need a formal request, he said, without looking up, and probably a judge's letter. Isabel set a folder down on the desk, neat, heavy. I have patient affidavits, I've notarized ledgers, and I have an appointment. The clerk blinked. Then he looked down at the top page and swallowed. Dr. Harrow's office, he muttered. 3rd floor, she is expecting you. Dr. Althea Harrow was younger than Isabel. Expected, clean-pressed. All bone and authority, with a silver fountain pen and no time for pleasantries. Miss Roca, she said, gesturing them in. I've read what you sent. You're not wrong, but you're not the only. One they've tried to silence. That caught Elias off guard. So you know? I know enough, Harrow said. We've had 2 board members resign in the last month. One fled the state. Another's body washed up near Gallup, labeled a fishing accident. She didn't smile. Isabel pulled out Pettin's envelope, opened it, slid the names across the desk. These are the ones involved. Harrow scanned the list. One name made her pause. This one, she said quietly. Dr. Madsen. He runs a clinic near Espanola. Never speaks at meetings, but he votes every time. What's he vote for? Elias asked. Expansion, funding. Approvals with no audits. Harrow looked up. If anyone knows where the records are buried, it's him. Where do we start? His assistant, Harrow, said Young. Smart might not know what she's sitting on. But if you get her talking, we will, Isabel said. They found the clinic the next morning. It was quiet. 2 clean smelled of bleach and lavender. A young woman at the front desk greeted them. Her name tag read Mara Doctor. Madsen's out today, she said. You can leave a message. Isabel smiled, warm, disarming. Not patients. We researchers. Looking into rural distribution records, Pettin out of Las Pedras used to log his quarterly reports here. Mara tilted her head. I don't know that name. Before your time, probably, Elias said. but I bet there's still boxes in the archive. Mara hesitated, looked toward the back office. I really shouldn't. Isabel leaned in. Let me put it this way. If someone's been doing something illegal under this roof, and you help us find it, you walk away clean. That did it. Mara blinked, then nodded. 15 minutes. Wait behind the clinic back door. They stood in the alley, breathing cold air and old tobacco smoke from the bar next door. Elias checked his watch. You think she'll come? She's scared, Isabel said. Scared people always come. At the 15-minute mark, Mara appeared, coat thrown over scrubs, a slim box in her hands.
What?
I don't know what half of this is, she said, handing it over, but I know it's not right. Patients with no names. Case numbers that don't match any official log. Elias opened the lid. Inside sheets of medical logs, test results. Dosages marked experimental. Ages as young as 9. Jesus, he muttered. Mara's voice dropped. One of those patients died last month. We were told to list it as pneumonia. Isabel's hands clenched. Thank you, she said. Mara nodded once, eyes darting down the alley. You didn't get it. This for me. And she was gone. They took the box back to Harrow. She scanned 3 pages before pushing it away. This is enough, she said. Enough for the board, enough for the Tribune. Will they print it? Isabel asked. They'll have to. Elias stood. So it's over? Harrow looked at him. No. It's just beginning. Boarded the train. The next morning, same seats, same eyes, watching them. But this time, Elias watched back. As the train pulled from the station, Isabel leaned her head against the glass. They used us like livestock. He said nothing. She sat up straighter. But we're not cattle, and now we've got teeth. And far behind them, in a dusty office filled with files that finally had names, a woman prepared to speak the truth on record. Not a whisper, not a letter, a declaration, because secrets couldn't stay buried forever. And Isabel Roca had decided she'd be the one to dig the rest up. The fire started just after midnight. A faint glow at first, barely, more than a flicker in the distance. Elias saw it from the kitchen window while making tea, too restless to sleep. He blinked, stepped closer, heart thudding. Then he saw the plume. Isabel. She was already at the door. Boots. Half-laced. That's the barn, she said, flat. By the time they reached it, flames were climbing the rafters, licking the dark sky. The horses were gaunt. Tommy had heard the cracking wood and gotten them out in time. Everything else was ash. Tools, records, supplies. The satchel with the remaining files. Gone. Tommy stood near the fence, face pale in the firelight, hands clenched. I didn't see them, he said. I swear. Isabel gripped his shoulder. You did enough. Elias turned, scanning the tree line. Nothing but wind and flame. They didn't mean to kill us, he said. Just slow. Us down? No, Isabel said. They meant to remind us we're not done. The fire burned itself out by dawn. What was left was smoke, ruin, and tracks that disappeared into hard ground. No prints, no witnesses. Silence. The next morning, a letter was nailed to their front door. It was in T-folded. Just a single sheet, scrawled in thick black ink. You should have stayed dead. There's more than one way to disappear. There was no signature. No need. Isabel poured herself a cup of coffee with hands that barely shook. She stared at the ashes out the window. Every breath came with effort now. Not fear, but pressure. The knowledge that the fight had changed wasn't just about records anymore. They were being hunted again systematically. Elias sat across from her, a map spread between them. The state lines, county jurisdictions, medical board offices. We leaked the files to the Tribune this week, he said. Harrow's statement goes public Monday. That buys us a window. Isabel traced a line along the Rio Grande with her finger. They won T-weight. They've already shown that. And we go loud, Elias said. Bring it to court. Demand a hearing. Force a grand jury if we have to. If the judge is one of theirs, then we drag it outside. She looked up at him. I'm serious, so am I. That afternoon, Harrow wired them. The files had reached the Tribune. The editor confirmed receipt. They planned to run a front-page expose names redacted for legal reasons, but the piece would tie the illegal trials to Peyton, the clinic network, and a slush fund routed through Leland's bank. It was enough to start a firestorm. But only if they survived long enough to see it printed. Tommy didn't speak much after the fire. Isabel found him near the creek, skipping stones badly. "You scared?" He shrugged. "It's only when I think about what happens if we lose." "You think we will?" Another shrug. "You always seem sure." "I'm not," she said. "I'm just too tired to stop." He nodded, and then quietly, "I heard a rider last night, before the fire." Isabel's eyes narrowed. "Why didn't you say? I thought I imagined it." She looked toward the ridge from the south. Tommy nodded. She stood. That was in T a warning. That was a scout. That night, they laid traps near the property line. Elias rigged an alarm wire near the shed door. Tommy sat with his rifle, back against the porch post, eyes red but awake. Isabel wrote her statement. 2 pages, handwritten. It's not for the courts, for the public. It's a letter to anyone who ever got told to shut up, keep quiet, sit still. She folded it, placed it in a sealed envelope. Wrote 1 line across. The back, "If I don't make it, publish this. Elias came in just after midnight. You really think it's coming to that?" "They think they're scared," she said. "And scared people get sloppy." He watched her a moment, then said, "You ever think about what you'd do if none of this happened? If you never took that job? Never came to Las Pedras?" She smiled. "Tired, honest. I'd probably still be poor. But I'd be bored. And maybe safe? That sound nice?" "No," she said. "Not anymore." She stood, 'cause something had changed. She was in T running. Not now, and not again. Near dawn, a shadow moved across the ridge. Not fast, not careful either. Leah spotted it. First silhouette against the paling sky. He raised his rifle, then lowered it. "Harrow," he muttered. She rode in hard, her horse lathered with sweat. Dismounted before it stopped moving. "They printed it early," she said, breathless. "Hit shelves this morning." Isabel took the copy she handed her. There it was, whispers in the white coat. "The hidden trials of New Mexico's Portha," first line read, "Dr. Nathaniel Pettin died 5 months ago. But the real damage began long before his heart stopped beating." Below it, a blurry photo of the clinic, and a list of case numbers. "We made noise," Harrow said. "They'll try to bury it again." "Let them try," Isabel said. But her eyes moved to the horizon, 'cause noise wasn't enough. Not yet. They still hadn't struck back, not where it hurt, and she knew exactly where to start. The bank looked the same whitewashed walls, same brass lettering above the door. Leland and Associates Trust Co. But this time, Isabel didn't see a building. She saw a crime scene, a clean one. One that had laundered blood with ink and debt and quiet signatures. She stood across the street in a gray coat and wide-brimmed hat, watching the front door like a gunslinger casing a duel. "Doesn't feel real?" Elias muttered beside her. She didn't take her eyes off the building. It's not supposed to. Inside those walls sat account ledgers, wire transfers, paper trail running straight from the stolen. Land in Las Pedras to a fund set up by Leland 20 years back, now worth more than a cattle empire. Oh, it wasn't just about medicine anymore. The experiments had been the tip. The money went deeper. And today, they were going to dig it up. An hour earlier, Harrow had handed her a key. "Locker 13, she'd said, "in the private vault. I got it from an old associate of Pettin's, retired now, too scared to come back. But he swore this is where Leland kept the originals." "Originals of what?" Isabel had asked. "Land contracts, quiet payoffs, and proof of who signed off." She hadn't hesitated. "Some things you don't wait to burn daylight on." The clerk at the bank gave them a long look when they asked for the vault. "Name?" he asked. "Pettin," Isabel said. "Steady. We're here on behalf of his estate." "Duh." The clerk stiffened. "I'll need confirmation." Isabel handed over the signed affidavit Harrow had. "Drawn up, official, sealed, irrefutable," He read it twice, then stood, slower than necessary. Follow me. They walked down a narrow hall, past glass offices and whispers behind polished doors. The vault was colder than she expected. Steel and stone, no windows. The walls swallowed sound. The clerk unlocked the main door. Lock a 13's. In the back, she nodded. We've got it from here. I can't leave you unattended. You can and you will, Elias said, low and hard. The man paused. Then, seeing Elias's stance rigid, sure, he stepped back. 10 minutes. Locker 13 held a flat metal box, heavy and dust-coated. Isabel pulled it free and set it on the table. Inside were rows of ledgers and sealed envelopes. She opened the top one. Cash withdrawals. Large, regular. Drawn from a dummy account under the name Stover Alden. She flipped the page. A signature. Rupert Leland. Another envelope contained deeds 5 parcels of land in Las Pedras and further west. Transferred under duress, all signed, by people now dead or missing. Elias leaned over her shoulder. They didn't just steal from you, he said. They've been stealing for years. Isabel turned another page. At the bottom, dated 7 years prior, was a letterhead. From the New Mexico Department of Health, approved. Experimental outreach treatment, rural zones, phase 1, no trial names, no ethics board stamp, just signatures. She read one of them aloud. Esther Varnell. Elias drew a breath through his teeth. She wasn't just covering for Rupert. No, Isabel said. She was a stakeholder. She took the files, tucked them into a fresh satchel, and for the first time the weight felt like power, not burden. They left the vault without a word. But just outside, near the door, Isabel stopped. Man in a blue coat stood leaning against the water trough. Same one who'd watched them on the train. He saw her, tipped his hat, then walked away. Elias caught her eye. You want to follow him? She shook her head, no need. He has a message. That night, they spread the documents across Harrow's table like a battle plan. This Harrow said, pointing to the bank logs, this is what nails them. It's not just medicine, not just death, theft, racketeering. Fraud and public pressures on our side now, Elias added. The Tribune's running a second. Peace this week. People are angry. Isabel looked at him. Angry doesn't stop bullets. Then we get louder before they can reload. In the morning, she wired 3 more papers. Denver, Austin, El Paso. Sent them copies, sent them summaries. Gave them dates, names, and phrases like state-sanctioned theft and rural exploitation networks. No more secrets. No more waiting for permission. When the wind kicked up around the courthouse square that afternoon, it carried something new fear. Not Isabel's, theirs. Because for once they weren't hiding in shadows. They were standing in the middle of town, holding matches. And behind her, Elias whispered, we just set the fuse. Isabel didn't smile. She didn't blink. She just said, let's see what burns first. The summons arrived 2 days after the Tribune published their second story, a folded slip sealed in wax, no postmark. Delivered by hand. Elias broke it open, read it twice. Want you to testify, he said. Isabel took it, eyes scanning the embossed header. State Senate Committee on Ethics and Oversight. Location, Santa Fe Courthouse. Date, 1 week. Attached was a second note, unsigned but typed clean. Your files forced our hand. Come. Ready? This will not be private. She folded it carefully and slid it into her coat pocket. Public hearing, she said. They're not just accepting what we gave them. They're putting it all on record. They're putting you on record, Elias replied. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. She knew what that meant. The moment she stepped into that courthouse, she wouldn't just be a survivor or a whistleblower. She'll be a threat, and threats get erased. That night, she couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because she could feel it coming, the shift, the last hand turning over on the table. There would be no more doubt, no more ambiguity. The people who tried to bury her in a snowstorm now had to face her in daylight. But daylight wasn't safe. Tommy was the one who said it first. What if they don't let you finish? Isabel looked up from the table. What do you mean? I mean, what if they nod and smile and write things down, but the whole time they're planning to make it vanish? The trial, the records, everything. She glanced at Elias, who said nothing, because he'd thought the same. Then, "We make sure too many people are watching," she said. She sent word through Harrow. Told the Tribune she would testify in public. Told them they could bring sketch artists. Told them to bring extra notepads. She wanted it documented. Ink, in voice, in witness. For days before the hearing, Harrow showed up in a dust-covered coat with her hand bandaged. "Someone tried to push me off the steps of the clinic," she said flatly. "Didn't get a good look." Isabel said nothing, just helped her inside and poured whiskey. "They're panicking," Harrow added. "That's good. Not if it gets someone killed," Elias muttered. Isabel looked Harrow in the eye. "You still coming?" "Hell yes," she said. "They want silence. I am done giving it." The day before the hearing, the wind turned. It brought dust from the canyon and a note tucked under. Their door, no seal this time, just for words. One chance. Walk away. Isabel crumpled it and tossed it in the stove. We're past chances. The morning of the hearing, they dressed in silence. Elias strapped his holster tighter than usual. Tommy wore a coat that didn't quite fit. He wouldn't be inside, but he insisted on coming to the courthouse steps. "I'm not hiding again," he said. Neither was Isabel. Gray, clean lines. No jewelry, no softness, only truth. And truth, she'd learned, needed no armor, just fire. The Santa Fe courthouse steps were packed reporters, townspeople. Survivors who hadn't known they were part of a larger story until the newspaper printed it out in black and white. Faces she didn't know stared back at her like she carried the torch they'd been waiting for. She didn't T-wave. Just walked straight in. Inside, the chamber was cold. Marble echoed footsteps, and the ceiling made every voice sound distant. The committee sat in a half-circle. 5 men, 2 women.
Most were gray.
Or black. A few looked bored. One looked frightened. She was called after Harrow finished her statement. "Miss Roca," the chairman said, "you've submitted documents. You've named names. You've made very serious accusations. Are you prepared to stand by them under oath?" "I am. Even knowing the risk of perjury should they be found false." "They're not false," she said. The clerk read the oath. She raised her hand, spoke clearly, and then silence. The chairman nodded. "Begin." She took a breath. "My name is Isabel Roker. I was employed by Dr. Nathaniel Pettin in Las Pedras until his death last year. I'm here today because I uncovered evidence of a long-standing scheme involving illegal medical trials conducted on rural patients without consent." She paused. Let it hang. "In addition to that, I've found proof that land in Las Pedras and neighboring towns was acquired through threats. Forced signatures and fraudulent banking activity, all tied to a network that included Dr. Pettin, Rupert Leland, and Esther Varnell." She pulled a folder from her bag. "These are the records. Transfer logs, correspondence, medical notes." She laid them flat on the desk in front of her. "For months, I was told to stay quiet. I was called a liar. I was almost killed. And I'm not the only one." She glanced toward Harrow in the gallery. "They wanted this buried. They wanted me buried." A pause, deep breath. "But here I am. The questions came after that. Why didn't you come forward sooner? 'Cause the sheriff was one of theirs. Why did you flee during the blizzard? 'Cause I was left to die in it. Did you alter any documents? No, can you verify these records?" "Yes, with testimony. With copies already distributed to 3 separate news outlets." And then the final question from a man with a deep voice and eyes like winter steel. "Do you believe this was sanctioned at a state level?" She didn't blink. "I believe it went higher than we think." That silenced the room. After they recessed, the press surged flashes, shouts, scribbled notes. Elias pulled her through the crowd, hand on her back, guiding without pushing. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she said. "Not yet," because something was wrong. The hallway was too quiet, the guards too still. And outside no Tommy, not on the steps, not near the rail. Gone, she looked at Elias. His eyes went wide. Then he turned fast, already moving. Because this wasn't just retaliation. It was a message. And Isabel felt the cold crawl into her bones as her words from days before echoed in her skull. "Let's see what burns first," they'd answered. And they'd taken the boy. They found the note tucked into the saddle of Tommy's horse, still tied where he left it outside the courthouse, still warm from the sun. No struggle, no sign of a fight. Just a folded piece of paper stained at the edges. One child for one silence. Dante speak again. Dante print again, or he dies. There was no signature. Didn't he need one? Elias handed it to Isabel with fingers like ice. "We knew this was coming," she said. "But not him," Elias replied. "Not the boy." Isabel. Didn't he answer? She couldn't he? Her pulse was a drumbeat in her throat, pounding too loud to think. This wasn't a warning. It was war. They moved fast. Harrow reached out to her contacts in the Tribune, telling them to hold the third installment. Delay by time. Ilya spoke to the marshal in Santa Fe. Got a name? A location? A whispered trail? There were men loyal to Leland still, and one of them Clay Hensley ran, a ranch 2 hours north, just far enough from law. To do what needed doing, just close enough to send a message when it was done. Isabel had heard the name before whispers in town. At the bar, stories about men who disappeared crossing his land. "You think he has 'em?" Elias asked. She nodded. "He's the kind who cages things smaller than him." "Can't wait," Elias said. "We Dante." They rode out before dawn. Just the two of them, no warrant, no escort, no time. The wind cut hard across the hills, and every hoofbeat sounded like a ticking clock. They reached the edge of Hensley's land just after sunup. A low-slung house sat in a bowl of dirt and barbed wire. No smoke from the chimney. One dog chained to a post. 2 horses in the pen. And a rusted bell nailed to the porch. Like a trophy. No guards. Too quiet. Elias tied the horses. Checked his rifle. Looked at Isabel. "You ready?" She didn't blink. Not for a second longer. They moved low through the fence line, kicking dust, hearts. Steady. The front door was unlocked. Side the smell hit. First sweat, old tobacco, stale beer, and something else. They cleared the first room, then the kitchen,
Ow.
then the back hallway. At the end of it, a door. Isabel reached for the handle, locked, but the key hung on a nail beside it too easy. She turned it slowly, pushed the door open. Tommy sat on the floor, hands tied, mouth gagged. Pale but conscious. Eyes wide, he was in tea alone. Clay Hensley stood in the corner, rifle cradled, as calm as a man at Sunday breakfast. "Shh, you shouldn't have come," he said. "Shh, you shouldn't have taken him," Isabel answered. "Orders are orders. Whose?" He smiled. "Yours to figure out." Elias stepped in behind her. "Drop it, Clay." Hensley didn't tea. Elias aimed. "I'm not here to talk." Neither was Isabel. She moved faster than Hensley expected. Crossed the room and drove her boot into his shin. He staggered. Elias fired once clean through the shoulder. Hensley collapsed, rifle clattering. Isabel knelt, untied Tommy with fingers that shook. "You okay?" she asked. The boy nodded, jaw clenched. She helped him stand. Elias cuffed Hensley's hands behind his back with his own belt, then looked at Isabel. "What now?" She stared down at the man groaning in the dirt. And for a second, just when she wanted to end it. Right there, but Tommy was watching. So instead, she said, "Now he talks." They tied Hensley to a chair in his own barn. Watered him, waited. It didn't take long. "They paid me $600 to hold him," he said. "Said it'd be no more than 3 days." "Who?" Elias asked. "Man with a limp. Drove a buggy with one busted wheel. Said the next letter'd come from El Paso." "Did he say who he worked for?" "No names. But he wore a ring, ruby center, like a signet." Isabel stiffened. She knew that ring. She'd seen it once on Esther Varnell's hand, but Esther was dead. Or so they'd been told. They rode back with Tommy between them, wrapped in Elias's coat. The boy didn't speak until they were an hour from Santa Fe. Told me you'd leave me, he said quietly. Said you'd trade me for peace. Isabel turned in the saddle. I would never. I know now, he cry. He just held tighter to the reins. That night, Elias sat on the porch, gun in his lap. Isabel joined him with a blanket and 2 mugs. We know who's behind this, he said, and she's not buried. No, Isabel replied. She's hiding in plain sight. Then, we pull her into the open. Isabel sipped her coffee, eyes narrowed against the wind. She wanted silence. Instead, she gave us a headline. Elias raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I'm thinking tomorrow we ride back to Santa Fe. We speak again, but this time, no committee, no filter. Who, to everyone, she stood, because the fuse had already been lit. Now it was time to drop the match. Oh! They called the press conference at noon, not in the courthouse, not in a closed hearing room, but on the steps of the Tribune itself, under a sky scraped clear by wind and time. People came from all across the valley. Farmers, ranchers, townsfolk from Las Pedras who'd seen too much and said too little. Mothers who'd buried children without answers, men who'd signed deeds they couldn't read, now standing in the crowd, shoulders squared. Isabel stood in front of them all, no podium, just a crate, a folder, and a voice she didn't intend to lower. My name is Isabel Roca, she began, loud and steady, and I was supposed to stay quiet. A hush fell. She held up the folder. And here are the records of what was done to our people. Experiments run without consent. Land stolen under threat. Names signed that don't belong to the dead but to those still walking free. She set the folder down. For a long time, I believed that truth was enough, that if you handed it over, people would do what's right. But that's not how this works. She looked across the faces. Truth without voice dies in the dark. She took a breath. I speak now for Nathaniel Peton, who died carrying guilt for things he didn't start. For Harrow, who risked her life to expose the network inside her own board. For Elias, who stood beside me when no one else did. For Tommy, who was taken to teach me Farand, came home stronger than the men who tried to break him. Voice sharpened. And for every person who didn't have a name in the ledgers, only a number. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't need to, they listened. And when she stepped down, they moved. The governor's office issued a statement within 2 days. A special prosecutor would be appointed. Arrests were already underway. Esther Varnell, thought dead, had fled the state and been intercepted crossing into Mexico under false papers. Leland's assets were frozen. Hensley would testify. In exchange for a reduced sentence, it wasn't clean justice. But it was justice. Enough to begin. Weeks later, Isabel sat on the porch of the house in Las Pedras. The land hadn't changed much. The wind still cut through the cottonwoods. The snow still clung to the ridge longer than it should. But the silence no longer pressed. Like a threat, Tommy was feeding the horses. Elias was painting the fence rail one board at a time, muttering about how nothing ever dried right this time of year. Isabel rocked slow, a letter in her hand from Harrow. I've stepped down from the board. They've asked me to help build a new one. One with oversight, one with memory. If you're willing, we could use a voice like yours. She folded it. Let the breeze take her thoughts before they hardened. She didn't know if she wanted to be part of another system, not yet. But she knew this much. She wasn't running anymore. And she would never be silenced again. That night, Elias found her watching the stars. You ever think about how close we came to losing everything? He asked. She smiled. We did lose everything, but we didn't stay lost. Sat beside her. You think it's over? No, she said. I think it's just ours now. He nodded. They didn't speak after that. There was no need. Some stories don't end with gunfire or gallows. Some end with land returned, names remembered, and silence broken so loud it echoes for generations. Because the West was never tamed by violence, was rebuilt by those who refused to forget. And in the end, justice isn't thunder. It's a woman standing where they told her to fall, still breathing, still speaking, still here.